Welcome into this Big Ten today on a Friday. We are presented by Rally House. Dave Revson, Jerry DiNardo, Dave Wanstead. We don't have to wait until Saturday for Big Ten action, and this is a trend. We're going to have a lot of these Friday games this season in conference. Starting with tonight, you could not ask for a better one in Lincoln.
What a matchup. I mean, both these teams undefeated. I guess it's the 400th straight sellout.
Yes.
You think it'll be loud for the Illinois offense?
Absolutely. You mentioned conference games. There's a lot of great conference games. The thing that's interesting is how many new players through the portal and young quarterbacks will be in a position that they're going to have to step up early for these meaningful games.
And we will have some of that in this game coming up here tonight. Illinois, Nebraska, our big story. The 22nd ever meeting between these two, and just the second time that both have come in ranked. A lot of similarities. Both have flexed some defensive muscle. Both have largely avoided turnovers, and both have gotten excellent quarterback play. Luke Altmaier for Illinois, Dylan Raiola for the Huskers. And both coaches know they are in for a serious battle.
But he brings a different element immediately. He's a very talented young man that's got incredible awareness, very talented, got a great deep ball throw. They maximize and utilize him pretty well. I think early downs, third downs, there's some things you can literally see him get better on every series. Just very impressive to see. I know he's a highly recruited player, brought a lot of attention and deservedly so. I've known the Raiola family. When I was coach at Wisconsin, his uncle was there, who I got to know very, very well. Then when I was in the league, got to know them, and then watched the story unfold wherever he was committed the first couple times, and then to go there last year brought a lot of attention to that, and you can see why he's everything that I would say that he's built up to be, and probably even more.
One of the main matchup issues in this game is how well we do versus those two receivers when we choose to play a run front. Can we win the one-on-ones? How well we do with the quarterback containing him. You saw UNI was using the zone read and all that, and they can do that with the quarterback. They can also, the Wisconsin last year, drop back, quarterback draw, which they do. So it's our front stopping the quarterback, and then, again, the power run game. And, if we give up 180 yards after contact, we won't win the game.
So you hear both coaches there concerned with the other team's offense, concerned with the other team's quarterback. And so as we break this down, let's just kind of follow their lead and talk about what we're expecting from each one of these offenses and how they match up with the opposing defenses. We heard Matt Rule there at the end, so let's start when Illinois has the ball against the Nebraska defense. You heard some of his concerns with Luke Altmaier. What are you focused on in this game?
The balance of the Illinois offense has really been the best it's been since Brett Bielema has been at Illinois. You've got to defend the option. Altmaier has been hot. Their offensive line is probably maybe the best one they've had there. So I think if I'm Nebraska's defense, I'm going to have to be a little bit more conservative than I'd like to be, because the options are always a threat, and the balance, whether it's run or pass. If they get single coverage into the boundary, they've got Altmaier throwing the ball into there. So if you cock your coverage away from it, I just think Illinois is going to attack the Nebraska defense like no one else has to this point.
Yeah, it'll be use the word balance, Jerry. That's going to be the key. Altmaier is second in the Big Ten with pass plays over 20 yards. So they've made some big pass plays. I think, Matt Rule's alluded to that with his corners covering those guys. So like you said, the balance will be the key. And I think starting fast, when I think of some of these Illinois teams, even a couple years ago when they had that really good team, a lot of times they came out and they didn't start fast. I mean, they're at home. There's no excuses. I mean, they should come out. They got to come out and hit these guys in the mouth and get after Nebraska quick and be focused. I mean, be emotional, but be focused, because let me tell you something. This defense that Nebraska runs, it's this 3-3-5. I'm very familiar with it. That's what Rich Rodriguez ran all the time. I was at Pitt. He was at West Virginia. And let me tell you something. The way they stack those linebackers, it's very difficult for an offensive line to be precise with who we blocking, because they'll move, they'll blitz, and so they're stacked, and it's not like lining up in a 4-3 where we can see the guy we're going and now we're going to block them. When they're stacked like that, there can be a little bit of indecision. And that's the whole thing with this 3-3-5 defense. They want indecision on blocking them for the run and indecision when they blitz who's coming.
Yeah, it really puts a lot of pressure on the offensive line. When you're head up to center and head up to 2 tackles and you're not shaded as if you were a 3 technique on the outside shoulder of the guard, it's hard for the offensive line. They don't see it that much. They have to work the zone blocking, and it's really more difficult than blocking a team that's 4 down with a shade. And then, as you mentioned, Coach, run the linebackers through. The only reason I think Tony White might slow down running the linebackers through is Illinois is an option team, and if you can block that linebacker who's running through, and the next man out has the quarterback, there's a gap for the running back.
It's interesting because to me, the matchup what you guys are talking about here, to me, is the matchup that I'm most interested in when Illinois has the ball, and that's their offensive line. Like, if there's one issue that Brett Bielema has repeatedly talked about in news conferences this year and his media availability, it is the offensive line. They've given up 22 tackles for loss. It is among the highest in the Big Ten. In fact, it is the highest in the Big Ten. And Nebraska has 22 tackles for loss on defense. So, I hear what you guys are saying there, and again, there is a risk-reward if Nebraska comes at them too hard, but it feels like that's the area where Nebraska has the advantage. And, man, their defensive line, like, it's not even so much are you running the linebackers through, right? Like, their defensive line, Ty Robinson and those guys, Hutmaker, those guys are really good.
And there is, every time you call a blitz, you are saying that my corners, just what Matt Roll alluded to, that my corners and safeties are good enough by themselves, basically, to cover your wide receivers. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and one thing that you don't want to do, playing down there in Champaign.
It's in Lincoln.
Yep. I'm playing in Lincoln. I've been to Lincoln. We were at Oklahoma State in Pitt, so I've been there probably 4 or 5 times. You don't want to fall behind. If you fall behind because you give up a big play or two, I mean, that's not easy, particularly when you're playing with a young quarterback. I mean, that's a lot of pressure on that kid.
So that's the matchup there when Illinois has the ball. What about when Nebraska has the ball here, guys? And Dylan Raiola, we've talked about all of the hype that he's gotten, and deservedly so. I mean, he's been fantastic to kind of take over that mantle right away in a high visibility, high pressure job, and to play as well as he has. He's done fabulously. But man, Illinois' defense is causing all kinds of trouble for people. 9 takeaways through 3 weeks. The undoing of Nebraska last year was turnovers. And this feels like, Colorado, for all of their offensive flash, you got Travis Hunter back there, who's a great corner, but it didn't feel like that was going to be the story in the game. Here, it feels like this could be the story. Like, you've got a defense which puts a ton of pressure on you and forces you to make bad decisions. This, to me, is the ultimate test here for Raiola.
Yeah, I think there's more chances that Illinois will blitz Raiola than Nebraska getting after Illinois' quarterback. You look at Aaron Henry after last year's setback. They've really come back strong. I'm guessing him and Brett had some great work during the offseason and have made some really important decisions about the defense. But conventional wisdom is you pressure a young quarterback. And Raiola hasn't been pressured all that much so far this season. And I think you do it early. If he can hold up, then maybe you slow down. But I'm going to pressure him early and see if he can handle it.
Yeah, when I look at this Nebraska offense, as well as Raiola is doing 73% completions, that's outstanding. But the one thing they don't do, and they're balanced, I get all that, they haven't made the big plays that Illinois does. So if this game is close, they got to be figuring out a way to come up with the big play. Now, the one thing with Nebraska's offensive line, I think, 1 sack, River, in 3 weeks they've given up. So these guys, they're doing a good job. This is going to be a different animal, as we say, because of the personnel and the talent level. We get that. But those guys have done a good job. So, I would mix in the pressure like Jerry's saying. But if I can't get there, if I'm having a problem get there, then obviously you better cover,
The big plays are going to come slowly. I mean, if you look at the way the game's being called when Nebraska has the ball, it's being called as a young quarterback. I mean, they're very cautious how they're calling plays for him. And it's tied into having very few sacks because it helps the offensive line to get rid of the ball quickly, but it also takes the pressure off the quarterback because most of it has been underneath the coverage. So I don't see them, unless Raiola gets really comfortable early, going for the big plays very much.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I know you want to say something here, Wani, but I guess I'm interested in when you have a team that's getting rid of the ball as quickly as Nebraska is, does that negate your ability to do what you guys are talking about and for Aaron Henry and Brett Bielema to dial up the pressure a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you can't get home, there's no sense calling it.
Right. So you can dictate it. You can dictate that offensively.
And the other side of it is Illinois can dictate it against Tony White's defense by the option. So they both can neutralize each other's defense if they decide to pressure a bunch.
And let's not lose sight of the special teams, right? And Jerry knows this. The bigger the game, the more important the game. Now all of a sudden that hidden yardage, that field position, becomes a factor. Whether it's kickoff cover, whether it's coverage, returns, making field goals. So usually when the game's over, you're going to look at that stat sheet and say, hey, how did the hidden yardage go? How did we win 2 of the 3 phases? That's what we got to do to win the game.
And at some point, will Luke Altmaier say, Coach, I can't hear what you're saying.
Right.
It's so loud, I can't hear the play. We're going to have to signal, or you're going to have to send somebody in. Crowd noise could be an issue.
Yeah, no doubt. They are going to be jacked up and ready to go. 400 straight sellout, as you said, Jerry, which is just
crazy.
Absolutely remarkable. Back to the early 1960s, back to when JFK was president. Every single game sold out. And so a milestone night for sure in Lincoln. Back on Big Ten today, fully half of the 10 winningest programs in college football history now reside in the Big Ten, and 2 of them will clash tomorrow in Ann Arbor. Michigan is first, USC 10th. The 11th all-time meeting, 8 of those have come in the Rose Bowl. The special nature of this matchup not lost on the current players, including USC QB Miller Moss.
I mean, whenever you go on the road, there's going to be an emphasis on communication and operation of the offense. I think that just comes with it, especially when you're going into a hostile environment. Obviously, they've got a really good group up there, a lot of veterans, like I said, that have played a lot of ball. But I think it's a challenge that those guys welcome, and I'm excited to see them take that on.
We'll get into the matchup in a minute, but how cool is this? This is a conference game. That USC-Michigan is a conference game in the Big Ten.
I know when you think about the game tomorrow, you also think about the future, right? I mean, this isn't a one-time deal. This is incredible that these 2 giants, in my opinion, both of them are giants in college football, are playing a regular season game.
Yeah, and how about the coaches trying to spin this in your mind, saying, guys, this game is for the conference, you know what I mean, for the play in the Big Ten championship. So, there's effect there on all levels of this game.
It kind of sets people back to think it doesn't matter who the opponent is, right? Which is, we're just taking.
I know you don't love that line of thinking.
We just take them one at a time. If you just take this one at a time, maybe you should have not joined the team.
23 all-time national titles between these 2 programs. Let's get into the matchup here, and I want to start with Michigan, and I'm excited to have both of you here for numerous reasons, but I've been wanting to ask both of you all week, and kind of from a coaching point of view, because we've talked a lot about this during the course of the week. Obviously, I do a lot of shows over the week, and we've talked quite a bit about Alex Orji and the fact that he is now the starting quarterback for Michigan. And I think the question that I've had and the concern that I've voiced a few times this week, and this is where I'm interested in your guys' perspective as a guy who was an offensive coordinator and a head coach and somebody who was a head coach, is if you knew when you took Davis Warren out in that game against Arkansas State last week, if you thought even in the deep recesses of your mind that there was a possibility that he may not be the answer as your starting quarterback and that you might be going to Alex Orji for this game against USC, which has massive stakes against a really good team, why would you only throw 4 passes with Orji? Why you're now starting a guy against USC who's thrown 7 passes in his career, and you had all that time to build some confidence in him and to build some confidence in the pass game?
What happens if you lost his confidence? What happens if it didn't go?
Well, then you say maybe he's not the answer against USC?
No, at that point, when Sharon made that comment about after the game, he said, Alex went in there and did pretty good. I may have to reevaluate it. We knew right then he had made a decision. We didn't know he made a decision. But when Coach Moore said in postgame what he said, he had already made his decision. There was no turning back. Warren was not going to, in my I mean, I don't know this for sure, but in my opinion, there's no way Sharon Moore thought about starting Warren against USC. Now, there is a downside to all of a sudden trying to throw it all over the lot tomorrow against Danton Lynn's defense, but he's not going to throw it all over the lot. I think at that point, Sharon Moore wanted to get out of the game with a win. You know, Arkansas, they were close by score, but not really by game tempo. Right. And I don't think he was thinking about, I better practice the throw game for next week. I don't know that I would have thought about that either.
Yeah, no, I take this back further, and I would love to talk to Sharon about, I mean, wouldn't you think that if they were thinking that Warren was going to be your starting quarterback, that it's not going to be Alex, the freshman. You get active in the transfer portal. I mean, I'm serious now.
Well, but think about the timing, though, Wani. Think about the timing, because think about how late Jim Harbaugh left, right? I mean, the portal had been open for 6 weeks by the time.
Well, why weren't they doing something? That's my point. Or you go with Orgy from day one, just like Matt Roll and some of these other guys are with freshmen. That's what I would have done.
But you also have an experienced Jack Tuttle in that quarterback room, and he's just been banged up. So maybe that was your insurance policy.
I think they put Warren in a tough spot. I really do. The guy's a great kid, and I don't know him personally, but not.
It's an amazing story.
Great story.
Amazing story.
They put him. I think he was in over his head. I think he really was with the inexperience and how many guys were drafted. I mean, this is a rebuilding year. Play your freshmen and get Orgy going from day one, and let's go to battle.
Well, Orgy's not a freshman, though. I mean, Orgy's been there a couple of years.
That's what I mean.
The other option is you've got Jaden Davis, who is a freshman, who's highly, highly recruited kid, and maybe then you say, well, maybe he's our future.
Yeah, but
we go there.
But that decision would have been made months ago. I mean, when we were at camp, it was a two-man race, and I left there saying that Warren was the right guy because I said, Alex is struggling throwing the ball. I don't think you can win big with Alex not being able to throw the ball better.
Physically or decision making?
Physically. Yeah. But then when you watch the game, Warren, there's 8 people in the box every time, and Arkansas State outnumbered Michigan in the box, and Warren couldn't do anything about it. Orgy could do something about it. As soon as Orgy came in, the Arkansas State game, they had 2 wideouts, 1 wideout here. They reduced the box to 6 people. They optioned one of them, so they had 5 offensive linemen gapping down, and they're reading the end man in the line of scrimmage.
So his ability in the run game, you think, offsets some of those or at least you can scheme around it as an offensive coordinator, offsetting some of those throwing.
Until you meet a real good defense, and they're going to meet one tomorrow. So, if I was playing USC every week, what I'm saying might not work. But most of the time, if I have better players, and they had better players than Arkansas State.
Presumably. Yeah.
I mean, Arkansas State, they couldn't block everybody. They didn't have enough people.
Yeah, Michigan's got to play this game clean. I would be talking to my team about we can't turn the football over. We got to beat them in that. We can't have penalties. They've had too many penalties. They were one of the best teams in the league last year. Now they're committing penalties. And let me tell you something. The best thing about this USC football team, we can talk all we want about their receivers and their players, is this defense, okay?
Right.
This new defense with Deonta Lynn, they were pressuring 13% of the time last year. They're 35% now. And they've got guys that can cover you, and if they're coming, and I think, I would see what this kid's all about. I would bring pressures, and you can talk option all you want. They understand the option. This is going to be, you know what this is going to be? This is going to be a Mullings-Edwards game. If Michigan's going to win, they're the 2 guys who are going to have to win it for them, in my opinion.
I would try to slow down Lynn's defense with the option in the run game before I would put Warren 7 yards deep behind the center and have him hold the ball for 3.1 seconds.
Or Orgy.
Well, not even thinking about being a big part of what Orgy's going to do. But if Warren's a starting quarterback, then you're putting all the pressure on the offensive line. They're a young offensive line. Everything leads to the change except 3rd and 7 is going to be a problem. 3rd and 7 is a problem for Johnny Unitas. I mean, 3rd and 7 is a problem for everybody, right?
You're dating yourself a little bit.
I'm just saying.
Who's he? I never heard of him.
There's no good solution to 3rd and long, whether Orji or Warren's in there. So if you stay on schedule, you have a chance.
And that's kind of to Wani's point. If Mullings and Edwards have a good game. I mean, USC's defense is a great story. We spent a ton of time here on Washington.
Great story.
On Michigan, I should say, and unfortunately we kind of like run out of time. But man, USC is a great story.
And let me hit a minute because I talked to Matt Leinart, about Miller Moss, the quarterback at USC. This guy, Matt told me that he said this guy is as smart. He's got 2 or 3 degrees already from USC, but he's just as smart on the football field. So for Wink Martindale, what's he going to do? You're not going to trick this guy. I don't think so. Not very often. So the point is, you got a decision week how you're going to defend him. And he has been outstanding, 70% accurate. I mean, all the numbers. The kid's having a great year. And, don't discount him because he's a new starter and on and on and on.
So when I was at camp, I thought they had top 5 talent in the conference. I never expected Miller Moss to have the kind of year. And Coach Lynn was going to get the defense better, but I didn't think he could get it better this fast.
Pretty quick, huh?
Pretty quick. And so to me, that's the surprise for me, USC. You go to practice, they're with Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State with those people talent-wise. But it just didn't look like. And then they beat LSU. How much confidence did that give that team?
Yeah, and if I'm Wink, I'm sitting in there and saying, okay, who do we got to take out of the game? Guess what? Last week, USC hit 14 different receivers, caught balls. Yeah. Coach, where do you want to start, Coach?
Don't look at me. I mean, they're really good because they have so many different guys who can beat you. And to your point, Jerry, not only they get confidence beating LSU, but the way they beat LSU, one of the most explosive offenses in the country, and they hold them to 20 points. It really speaks volumes about the progress they've made. The American Volleyball Coaches Association has been gradually rolling out its watch list for the National Player of the Year over the last few days. 10 Big Ten players among the initial group, including 4 from Nebraska, 3 from Wisconsin, including Sarah Franklin, who won the award a season ago. The final dozen were released today, and the Big Ten once again making its presence known. 3 additional players, Jess Merzick of Penn State, and then 2 Purdue Boilermakers, Chloe Chicoine and Eva Hudson. So congratulations to all of them. That is 13 in all on that Player of the Year watch list. How about our guy Anthony Herron there, hoisting the pig, huh?
I've really enjoyed getting to know all the animals that the conference plays for down through the years, 18 years. I'm starting to get used to the pig.
Floyd of Rosedale, 97 pounds of bronze swine. The earliest ever meeting, Iowa and Minnesota, the 118th time. But again, this will be the earliest on the calendar they've ever played it. Both are 2-1. This feels to me, guys, like a game that could go either way. So, Wani, I'll let you start. What do you think could sway the balance?
Yeah, I think both these teams are winning very similar from the standpoint that they're running the ball. Between Darius Taylor from Minnesota and Caleb Johnson from Iowa, that's their DNA. When I think of P.J. Fleck, row the boat, that's what he's doing. When I think of Kirk Ferentz, offensive line, which is much improved, that's what they're doing. And so I look at this thing offensively that it's going to come down to the quarterbacks, who can make a few plays. Both these guys have been pretty good as far as protecting the ball. A turnover one way or another could be the difference in this game. But I think the difference real quick in this game is the defense. And I can't believe I'm saying that Minnesota's defense. With Corey Heatherman, let me tell you something. This guy is a rising star. He was at Rutgers. He was with Signetti at George Mason. And, 2 shutouts in the last 2 weeks. But, right now, Iowa's usually the defense. They're coaching them the same. It's the same scheme, but they're just struggling, Jared. Like I haven't seen them in a few years.
Yeah, Phil Parker's defense has given up more big plays. My guess is they're going to get that solved before they kick off tomorrow. I'm guessing Phil wasn't in the best of moods this week, and I think maybe he got the message across. Okay, so they both play defense. Okay, they're both good defenses. So to me, the quarterback, which you already mentioned, The special teams for Iowa is probably the one area of the three areas that separates themselves statistically from Minnesota. The average starting position because of the kick game is the 28-yard line for the opponents of Iowa. So if Iowa continues to play special teams, they've done, that's a long way to go against the Phil Parker defense, even though they've given up some big plays.
And a win would be the 199th of Kirk Ferentz's amazing career at Iowa.
Wow.
It would tie him with Amos Alonzo Stagg for the second most all-time in the Big Ten, and he is certainly within range of passing Woody Hayes this year, which is remarkable. Again, that'll be a huge story if, in fact, it unfolds this way as the year goes on. So a conference game there. We've got a conference game out west as well. It's the first Big Ten game ever for Washington, and tailgate will be there. Mike Hall, Tyvis Powell, live from UW. Get you ready for another full slate of Big Ten football. Fun begins at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. As for the game, fellas, let's start with the home team and Washington coming off the loss to Washington State, a loss that really came down to one play, Wani. And so now, as a coach, Jed Fish, first time you faced that kind of adversity, how do you get him back?
Yeah, let's give Washington State a little bit of credit here. This coach has been building that program in a high-class way for 3 years, and it was a rivalry game. You got new staff, you got new players, and like you say, it was a one-score game. This Washington team will be much, much improved this week. I mean, I promise you they will be. This is going to be a tough game for Northwestern for a couple reasons. One, because they're getting an angry Washington team, and playing up there, other than maybe the Coliseum, and I played in all the stadiums when I coached at USC, going up to Washington, they're going to find out is not an easy place to play.
Yeah, I played there twice as a coach, once as an assistant, once as a head coach. It's a very difficult place to play. Jed Fish, I just have such an appreciation for his play calling ability. Even though the last play of the game was a fourth down play and there was the option into the boundary and all that, he said that's one of the plays they wanted to run during practice. If we were in that situation, maybe he regrets it and all that, which I really respect him saying maybe I shouldn't have changed the play, because he changed it the first time he got a line of scrimmage. But what makes him such a great play caller is, everyone runs basically the same plays. But it's when you run them. When he's backed up, he throws it. When he's in tight, he runs it. He calls the same plays as everybody else does. He just calls them at a different time. And I think Steve Spurrier, which is one of his mentors, was very much the same way. Everyone used to think that Steve's offense was so complicated. It wasn't. He just always called the right play against the defense that you had out there, and Jed's a lot like that.
This will be a good challenge for Tim McGargle, first-year defensive coordinator for Northwestern. They've been really good against the run. They've given up 3 runs longer than 7 yards all year, and they played 3 games. So they've been really good. The issue for them is offensively. Again, they started Jack Lausch against Eastern Illinois, and they did move the ball in the second half. He didn't throw an incompletion. In fact, the team didn't throw an incompletion in the second half. But this is a different animal against Steve Belichick and company.
No, but, I mean, the game last week for Jack, it was a good step. How'd you like him to be first-time starter against the Washington defense, right? So he'll get settled down. He's going to need help from his run game. He's going to need help from his receivers. But we don't really know how good he is, and we won't even know after the Washington game. But good for Jack that he had this game last week that you knew they were going to win just to get under your belt.
Yeah, the first thought I had is in this game, my stars got to play like stars. You know what I mean? I mean, Cam Porter's got to show up heading at the receiver. I mean, these guys have to make plays, and along with the defensive guys, when the opportunity's there. We can't let an opportunity slip against Washington on the road.
It'll be fascinating to see kind of how they scheme against an inexperienced quarterback in Lausch. Mike Wright, for all the struggles that he had, Mike Wright's played a lot of football in his career, both at Vanderbilt and Mississippi State. Jack Lausch, not nearly as much. So we'll see how the chess match works out there. Up next, our big stat focusing on Ohio State's offense. It is early, but top 10 in the nation in scoring, yards per play, total yards heading into tomorrow's game against Marshall. Ton of weapons, including Emeka Egbuka, who went over 2,000 career receiving yards in a shellacking of Western Michigan a couple weeks ago. Egbuka now with Fox's Brady Quinn.
does it mean to be an Ohio State wide receiver?
That lineage is something that made me want to come here in the first place. Being a highly touted recruit, I knew I probably could have gone a lot of other places and, maybe been off to a more fiery start than here at Ohio State.
End zone right there, touchdown for AVCA.
So being a part of this receiver room is something that I'm very prideful about.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the freshman, what you've seen in Jeremiah Smith?
Jeremiah Smith, look at him go. #1 receiver recruit in the country, kind of see why.
He's a dog, and he's going to go out and take what's his, but he's also super professional about the way he goes. We told him, the main thing you got to do to be able to play as a freshman is obviously you have to have the ability, which you have, but you have to be able to know the plays and the formations and be stout in your mind. And he took that to heart. He's, constantly in his playbook and all that type of stuff. So the way he goes about his business is very professional.
Buckeyes have found their rhythm on offense.
A lot of people use the phrase all in. When you hear all in, what does it make you think?
We're putting everything on this season. We're staking everything on this season. We really feel like we have the talent to do it, but it's just, can we put it all together on the field? Can we play for each other? Can we play for the brotherhood?
Well, they certainly do have the talent. Jerry, I know you studied this Ryan Day, Chip Kelly offense here over the last week or so. What did you learn?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Now, with my stats, you stop when the game's out of hand, right? So this isn't an official stat, but they are an option team. And when I say they're an option team, that includes RPOs, which means I'm counting an option as one of the passes because that's the modern day triple option. And then they go, they're also a pocket team. They're a play action team, and they're a direct run team. They can decide just to give the ball to the tailback. They can option, they can play action, and they can run triple option. It's fascinating. And think about it. The morale of the team, everybody wants a part. You don't go to Ohio State.
One football, right?
Yeah, there's only one football. And Chip Kelly has come up with a system that everybody gets the ball, but they are really hard to defend.
Yeah, and defensively, they got 8 starters back, and they add the top portal player, Caleb Downs from Alabama, right, to come in. And I think Ohio State fans need to really sit back and appreciate what Ryan Day has done. He kept 5 draft pick guys coming back this year and playing another year, okay, combined offense and defense, at least five. And then he signs the #1 recruit, Jeremiah Smith. He signs the #1 portal player, arguably, Caleb Downs. So, the guy, and they're playing at the level that everybody expected them to. There's a lot of teams right now that are struggling that were, quote, in that top 5. The Florida State, Clemson. I can name them, right? But Ohio State is one of the few that you said nationally right now, boy, I'll tell you, bring in Chip Kelly. He's done a great job, in my opinion, of putting this team together. Now they got to go do it,
How about hiring Jim Knowles 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
From
Oklahoma State, right?
Yeah, and that wasn't a great defense his first year. And I have so much respect for Jim Knowles that he adjusted the defense, and his ego had nothing to do with it.
Yep.
And now, those guys are scary good at practice.
A lot less risky. Yeah, Chip Kelly said to us, we have a hard time. We're doing an inside drill. Right. We have a hard time getting back to the line of scrimmage against these guys. And it's not like he doesn't have talent. He's got maybe the best backfield in the country.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah. and it's a compliment to Ryan and to Jim Knowles both.
Yeah, 108-6. They've outscored their first 2 opponents. Let's take a look at the big board, and you see Ohio State, one of 3 early games in the conference tomorrow. The other 2 are here on the network. 11 Saturday games in the league, obviously have the one tonight as well. UCLA, Rutgers, Michigan State, Purdue, all on the road. Get to those in a bit. And then you see our mid-afternoon game, Penn State and Kent State. And I did mention this yesterday, and I'm not trying to pile on here, but the golden flashes of Kent State are last in the nation in both total offense and total defense, Wani. So if you're James Franklin, you don't necessarily look at this in your head and say, man, we're going to get a really tough game here. You certainly hope you don't. So let's say it goes according to plan.
Right.
And let's say you're blowing them out. What can you get out of this as a head coach?
Well, I think you want to start fast and you want to play clean. You know, you can blow somebody out and put the ball on the ground or commit some foolish penalties. So come out of the game, start fast, clean well, and you know, this is going to be, you wanted big plays, right? James Franklin wanted big plays, got 6 plays over 20 yards this year. So that's working. And then how about the backfield of Franco Harris and Lydell Mitchell? Oh, I'm sorry. Singleton and Allen. Jerry and I know. You don't even know who. You know Franco and Lydell Mitchell.
I know Franco Harris, the Immaculate Reception.
Wait, Lydell Mitchell.
You think I was born yesterday?
Easy, fellas, easy.
Lydell Mitchell.
Yeah.
Okay, they were the 2 backs when we played them, when I played. So this is what this team looks like right now. I love it.
I think when you say play clean, if you play clean, it means that you probably have prepared right. And James is one that, whether it's Kent State or whoever it is, we do the same thing every week. So this is right up his alley. I mean, if it's true that it doesn't matter who the opponent is, they ought to come out and beat this team up pretty good. I do think their offense still wants to be explosive. And, you know, Tom Allen's defense has given up some big plays since they started the season.
They have.
And that can be a realistic goal. I mean, Kent State should have a tough time gaining a run over 10 and a pass over 15.
Absolutely.
That, to me, is an area you can really emphasize because the defense came out flat against Bowling Green.
Right.
And can you come out and play well from the get-go, whereas it wasn't until the second half they did in that game. Indiana's 3-0. Jerry, they have been nearly flawless. They're hosting Charlotte. It's all been good. But what's impressed you the most about Indiana 3 games in?
When I turn the video on and I watch it, I mean, they are so well coached. They're playing hard. They have a plan. Mike Shanahan offensively is a little bit like Jed Fish. He calls the plays that everyone calls, but he calls them at a different time. They're well coached. They're creative offensively. And Sig told us he was going to see us in Indianapolis. He may. And he shared some of his feelings. He's shared some of his feelings at a basketball game about some of the other schools.
Yeah,
but you know what? He's backed it up so far.
Hey, and the way they start, that's what gets my attention. I mean, they come out of that locker room, and all 3 phases, they are hitting on all cylinders. It's almost like Sig had a scrimmage, 10-play scrimmage in the locker room. I mean, they're lathered up, they're scoring points, they're balanced on offense. So this is not a deal where he was trying to run it every play or throw it. I mean, they're balanced. They got it going right now. A lot of confidence.
A lot of good stuff. And Sig's old enough that he should know when it says smile, you're on candid camera. Okay, if we can get him to smile.
Why did the guy have a headache in the fourth quarter?
Well, I get the sense he's a bit of a perfectionist, right?
Wow.
I think so.
Yeah, just a smidge. Well, there have been some perfection here early on. They've yet to turn the ball over, which I think is remarkable. When you think of all the new players who haven't played together, the top dozen in the nation in total offense and total defense. They have been really good. And how about the Indiana soccer team? We'll see them in action tonight as well. Yeah, they have been good. They renew their rivalry with Maryland. Live coverage begins at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Experience the expanded Big Ten Conference like never before with Big Ten Plus. Stream thousands of non-televised live events across the Big Ten. Plus, enjoy next-day game replays for every Big Ten game. Subscribe right now, BigTenPlus.com. A few other games to get to. Michigan State and Boston College. Jonathan Smith has Michigan State unbeaten. This is a tough assignment. Bill O'Brien and BC, they were ranked as of a week ago. They lost a tight game to Mizzou, dropped out of the rankings. But what does Michigan State need to do to come out with a win?
You know, they're a little bit like Indiana. I mean, they've got off to a fast start, and these head coaches have done a great job. I think Aiden Childs, you know, he's going to get pressure. I think Bill O'Brien's defensive staff will pressure him. He's got to be better under pressure. It's okay to throw an incompletion. It's okay to scramble and get out of bounds. You don't have to throw the ball every single time. And sometimes young quarterbacks always want to make something happen, and he just can't do that.
Yeah, you could see the growth, though. You know, I mean, obviously, would they have 6 turnovers the first 2 weeks and 0 last week? He hit 10 different receivers with the ball. That tells me that he's starting to put the whole thing together. So they have definitely improved. The one thing, and I hate being negative, 11 penalties. I mean, 11 penalties against Boston College up there. That could be that could be the difference in the game. So they need to just clean up the penalties. But I think they're making steps. I mean, you can see it.
And that's been a story each of the first few weeks. That's been a consistent theme here for Michigan State. So we'll see if they can kind of end that bugaboo. What about Rutgers at Virginia Tech? Wani, key to victory there.
Well, you know, the two games that Virginia Tech won, they ran the ball for 250 yards each game. Now, you know, the quarterback's been average for Virginia Tech. We know Greg Schiano, right? We know that his team is going to protect the football. They're going to play the run. They're going to be disciplined. He's going to have all the bases covered. The biggest difference with this Rutgers team is they added from Minnesota, Ethan Kaliakmanis.
Yep.
And already he's got 6 plays over 20 yards. That's what Rutgers didn't have last year. The possibility of passing, and we know about their running back, Kyle. I mean, right now he's leading the league in Manungai. I mean, leading the whole conference in rushing. So they get I'm on Rutgers. You guys know that. I don't have to say.
This team is so Greg Schiano. I mean, he takes over and he bases his program on toughness. He bases his program on defense. He bases his program on the run game. But that's not enough. That's not enough to beat the best of the teams in the conference. Or it's not good enough to separate yourself from those teams that are struggling. And now he's throwing the ball more in 1st and 10. And this has been carefully, Kaliakmanis is part of this. This has been carefully designed for Greg Schiano to take the next step. It's just so him. And it's really looked good, this 1st and 10 pass game.
Virginia Tech better have their punt protection and their field goal because Schiano, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he's one of the best in the country at blocking kicks. He loves it, trust me. And they better shore up that protection.
There's some irony that we're warning Virginia Tech about block kicks, right? Because obviously Beaver ball through the years.
That's right.
That was the place where you thought of block kicks. Hey, a quick thought on UCLA. This is a tough assignment going to Death Valley. You certainly know it well. At LSU, they did not play well at all last week. They've got 2 more ranked games after this one, so 3 in a row. How do you get your team back if you're Deshaun Foster?
You know, if his team's in crises, which if you want to label a crisis, to me, what I always did is I started meeting with every single player on the team one-on-one, make sure we're still okay, make sure things are good, and let's put the bad behind us and let's move forward. He's got to stay connected with his team emotionally.
Yeah, these kids got to, obviously pick it up. This is a great opportunity on Big Time TV.
We will see how UCLA fares in that one. Looking forward to all the action starting tonight. Should be a great weekend. We'll see you throughout the weekend here on the Big Ten Network.